Everybody good, or do you need a minute? All good? Okay. Well, I suppose good afternoon. Thank you all for being here again on short notice. Council met this morning for a special meeting called on very short notice in order to receive further updates from Mr. Laughlin and the city administration team about the city's response to this rapidly changing pandemic situation out there in the world, and then specifically what that means for the city of Edmonton as an organization providing essential public services, and then what it also means for our democracy and our local government, which was intact and on in fine form today, even though half of council was on the phone. So in the meetings, we had the opportunity to hear the briefing. You'll hear some more from Adam in a moment on that, and then also make some decisions about how your council will function for the foreseeable future, which is that we empowered ourselves to meet virtually if necessary for up to 6 or 7 weeks, and also to suspend meetings in the short term. So I'm going to ask Adam to offer a few more comments about the city's response and then take some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just reiterating some of the things that we shared yesterday. We're taking steps to minimize exposure to Edmontonians while rec centers will remain open. We are limiting programming or eliminating programming, and we're continuing to monitor that situation, and we'll do that on a regular basis. Edmonton Transit, we're continuing to take efforts to heighten the disinfecting and cleaning to ensure safety of our employees and the public. Our senior centers will be closing, and we're also working closely with agencies on the senior center side. City of Edmonton-led public events are closed or canceled, until further notice. We are continuing to evaluate city attractions in terms of their continued operation. And we're doing many things with our staff to ensure that we're managing through this situation, encouraging for those employees that can work from home to work from home, to take steps to have virtual meetings instead of face-to-face meetings, to use technology as much as possible. Business travel has been eliminated for employees of Edmonton, and we're encouraging staff, if they do feel like they need to self-isolate, to do that and take the steps that are prescribed by Alberta Health and or Alberta Health Services in terms of ensuring that they're taking care of themselves. Our commitment is to our employees and the safety of our employees. It's also to the health and safety of Edmontonians, and we're lockstep with Alberta Health to ensure that any steps that we take are in line with the advice from Alberta Health. We are in an approach that I would call responsive but proactive. So any direction or advice provided by Alberta Health or Alberta Health Services, we are prepared and we will action accordingly. Available for questions. Thank you.
Who made the decision to cancel or suspend council meetings?
It was a recommendation from administration, but working closely with mayor and council. It was ultimately council's decision to take that step, and the mayor can speak to that. But the impetus for our recommendation was on the basis of trying to balance our workforce and take steps to focus on the priority services or the key services in the city of Edmonton, and to minimize mass illnesses that would cause challenges in being able to provide services.
So for those services, if somebody wants to go to the tower and pay something, for example, is that's still ongoing?
It is, but I mentioned at council today, our approach to this is changing on an hourly basis, and it's on the advice and insight from Alberta Health. But as it stands today, yes, and we'll continue to evaluate.
Adam, what does this mean for the business or city business? So, for example, public council or public engagements, there was something planned for Jasper Ave. So does this start a ripple effect are projects potentially delayed because engagement sessions are delayed? And can you take us through that kind of scenario?
Yeah, and I can't predict or identify the time frame associated with this, but there will be some delays. The ripple of those delays are too hard to quantify at this point in time. But we are taking the first step to protect our employees, protect the public as best we can. Once we get to the point where we're in a position where we're more comfortable in terms of the ability to manage within containment, the second phase of the pandemic plan, we'll reevaluate.
What went into the decision to close the city's senior centers?
Through our conversations with Alberta Health and Alberta Health Services, and certainly the regular updates, they've identified vulnerable populations. Seniors have been identified as vulnerable when it comes to this illness, and so it's a proactive step to ensure that we minimize opportunities for contraction.
I understand it's only happening on Monday. Why the delay? Is it a transition period to get to that point?
Not totally clear on the timing as it relates to other facilities, but we're taking steps today to close those facilities. It is a bit of wind down associated with those facilities to ensure that we're not creating too much disruption.
You're keeping rec centers open for now. Are you vocally discouraging people from going?
One of the key elements of going is if you're sick, and I'll say this repeatedly, if you're sick, do not go. I think what we're trying to do is encourage individuals that if they do want to utilize the rec facility is to follow the guidelines and the information provided by Alberta Health and Alberta Health Services. In terms of accommodating those individuals at the rec centers, we're encouraging them to, like Alberta Health, follow the hygiene expectations, make sure that you wash, that you use, that you sanitize, and we're upping our efforts in terms of cleaning and sanitizing the facilities as well. But we are targeting a reduction of the mass gathering component and encouraging social distancing to ensure that we're minimizing the direct impact.
And some of the big events that you say those will be canceled at the rec centers, is there a specific hockey tournament or something that you can name that's being canceled?
Not off the top of my head. I would just say that I understand Hockey Canada has taken some steps to eliminate events that they had planned.
Can we use the example of the senior center? Are you anticipating then, I guess, layoffs within the corporation?
I wouldn't say we're there. What I would say is that we're actively monitoring our staffing complement as it relates to any decisions we make around closures or reductions in service. But we are putting our employees' safety first in this, and understanding there'll be some budget implications. We have to put our employees and our public safety first.
And so can you, I know we're early on, but can you answer how much will this cost the city of Edmonton?
Don't have that at this point in time.
Can you be a little bit specific about the cleaning, ramping up the cleaning, like in what way?
So I think if the frequency of cleaning was X number of hours, we'd increase that on the basis of the resources we have. And we're also looking at different types of cleaning equipment that's learning from other agencies and municipalities that could help us in the effectiveness of those cleaning supplies. So that's a high-level example, and if you need more specifics, we can get that for you later.
We heard today there was a recommendation of a 2-meter distance between people. We're all within 2 meters of each other right now. Looking at transit, people on packed LRT trains or buses will be within 2 meters of each other. Are you saying only take transit if absolutely necessary? Is there contradiction to that?
Yeah, I think there is some judgment, certainly, and folks need to exercise that judgment. Transit is a critical service for folks to move around the city. It is a vital service that we have for our Edmontonians. I would encourage individuals to exercise caution because in those scenarios, the advice on the social distancing is through Alberta Health and or Alberta Health Services is a 2 meter. It's 1 to 3, but typically 2 meter window or buffer. So there are cases where that can't be achieved. So we just encourage Edmontonians to use caution at this time. I think what we're trying to emphasize is to minimize as much as possible the risk of contraction and to take the steps that Alberta Health or Alberta Health Services have identified, understanding that for some instances it's difficult to do that. So you can supplement that with other steps, making sure that you're utilizing sanitization equipment or hygiene parameters, or that if you are coughing or sneezing, to use the cough into your elbow or sneeze into your elbow to minimize the spread.
So essentially, are you waiting on Alberta Health to issue a directive when it comes to public transit before kind of jumping the queue, I guess?
We don't know what steps Alberta Health will take with public transit. What we're doing is proactively preparing for, not preparing, we're proactively taking the steps to clean, sanitize transit. If Alberta Health Services or Alberta Health take a step that's even more restrictive in terms of use of transit systems, we're in a position to respond.
For continuing essential services, if it comes to it, is moving resources around on the table, and has that been looked into?
Within the city of Edmonton?
Yeah.
Yes. Part of our business continuity planning includes a tiering of services, and within that tiering of services, we allocate resources that could be, or identify, resources that could be reallocated to support some of our critical services. One of the things that we are doing is, where possible, we're encouraging our employees to work from home. Where there isn't a disruption of service or a minimal disruption of service, we're actually encouraging our employees to work from home so that we can minimize the spread and I referred to it today, flatten the curve of exposure and approaching that critical mass associated with impacts to the Alberta health system, but also our ability as an organization to deliver services.
Can you just speak briefly about the critical services? They're not here, but the emergency response. How is the city handling that, and is there any concern about, again, quarantines and, an extended group of people being home and not performing their function for those essential services?
In terms of emergency response, we have an emergency management agency group that includes fire, it includes police, and we've been meeting on a fairly regular basis to be able to prepare and respond to that. But they are taking measures to ensure that they are typically in the line of the most at risk when it comes to that. And so we're making sure that they're doing the necessary steps that they need to do in terms of hygiene, cleanliness, and protecting themselves with the appropriate personal protective equipment to ensure that they can continue to provide services.
Perhaps a question for the mayor. I'm wondering about your thoughts on the economic impact this whole situation is having on city businesses, no NHL games, fewer people going to restaurants, that sort of thing. What's the message to the business community about the impact?
Well, I think that there's perhaps almost the same amount of anxiety about the economic situation as there is about the public health situation, and obviously they're linked and they sort of multiply against each other, because what we're really dealing with here is uncertainty. And the markets don't like uncertainty, and so all of our RSPs reflect that right now. But for business leaders trying to anticipate what to supply, how to staff, it's very, very challenging. They'll be having, as employers, a lot of the same very difficult conversations that we're having as the city of Edmonton. But I think it's important for us to bear in mind that these are issues not limited to our community. These are now questions being asked across our country and around the globe, and that the cumulative effect of that global economic uncertainty is very, very difficult for business, and However, this is when the soft infrastructure of community and public services is more important than ever, because that no one can take away from us regardless of what your stock portfolio is. So those intangibles of neighborliness, willingness to help a neighbor who might be vulnerable, an aged friend or family member who doesn't feel comfortable going out right now to meet their own needs, where we can help each other informally in that. So social distancing doesn't mean that we cut ourselves off from each other. It means that we maintain a respectful distance and that we work from home and take other measures to reduce the spread of disease. But that doesn't mean we become antisocial. If anything, we need to be more social than ever while we socially distance physically from each other. And so these are often the kinds of things where in the moment it's very unnerving, but after the fact we realize how linked together we are as community members. And so that's what will get us through this. And we're going to have to be there for our businesses as well, because it's already a struggle for them. And so if you have an opportunity to patronize a local business, I saw a great text from somebody who said the lineups were very long at a large brand grocery store that you would all recognize, so they went to the Italian Center and there was nobody there. So patronize local businesses if you have the opportunity. You can still order takeout if you don't feel comfortable staying in a restaurant. So there's still the opportunity to support those businesses that you value and help them get through this. But no doubt it's going to be a struggle.
Would you feel comfortable having dinner out tonight, for example?
As long as I was sitting 2 meters away from whoever I'm having dinner with, I suppose, or I know somebody who I'm close to. So I think it's important that families really stick together through this. I mean, if you're socially distancing from colleagues, say, but it's hard to socially distance from your own family. So I think there's still the opportunity for people to break bread together with those who they know are in the same position of exposure, frankly. So yeah, I think there's still no need for anyone to take drastic action, but take appropriate action to limit the spread, and then also exercise all of that hygiene and diligence, whether you're home or whether you're out at work or whether you happen to be going to get groceries or something to eat.
As of last night, there were 23 cases in the whole province. As of last night, it's probably could change today. Do you think there's a bit of an overreaction here?
Well, it's really not for me to say what the appropriate level of reaction is. There's certainly a lot of communication out there that I think is very well intentioned around flattening the curve and doing everything we can on a global scale in order to reduce transmission. I don't think that's an overreaction. I think that's prudence. I can think of what overreactions would be, and I don't think that that's what you're seeing. And again, the most important thing is for us to take cues from the public health experts who have the real-time data. The rest of us would be speculating, and so that's why we've taken a deliberate stance of deferring to the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the province to give us guidance, because their data is better than ours. That said, as an employer, we've taken some proactive steps in order to ensure the resiliency of our workforce and our organization to be able to persevere through whatever may come. So you can make risk management based assumptions, which is very, very different than overreacting. And I think the city is as an employer, doing some of that risk management just to maintain continuity of business, but that it's wisest for all of us to listen to the experts who have the data and frankly, the credentials to interpret the data better than any layperson can, including politicians.
Even though we don't have a number, are you concerned about the financial hit to the city's bottom line?
So this is one of the reasons why the city has reserves and contingencies available to us. There are extraordinary provisions should the need arise in the state of local emergency. And again, we're far from that for the city to carry on business and sort of pick up the pieces and pay the bills later. And I think that's what the public expects is this is when their public institutions need to be at peak performance, and will pay the bills in due course. Of course, we're going to do that, but our primary focus has to be on employee safety and public safety. Employee safety so that we can serve the interests of public safety, and we'll make prudent decisions. But I asked today, are we going to spare any expense on cleaning? And the clear answer was no. So we're gonna spend where we need to in order to support that primary goal of public safety and public health.
What your revenue side is going to get hit, right? Your of government are probably gonna hold back money too, because they've got priorities, so. we're
Every,
not-
every government in the world is facing the same situation, which is that day-to-day business has been disrupted, and that disrupts commerce, which disrupts cash flow for everybody. So private organizations are also dealing with this. Those are some of the cascading issues the world's going to have to figure out how to deal with. But cities and local governments have never been more important in terms of those frontline services to keep things moving as much as possible and to minimize disruption and provide for safety and public health. And so, I'm confident that we'll figure all that out in the fullness of time. We did discuss a little bit this morning that the 2020 budget will require some adjustment, and we'll find a way to discuss that next month. But really, that's I want the city manager focused primarily on the safety of our employees and the safety of the public, and we will pay our bills in due course, and I expect him to exercise prudence through that function, but primary focus is safety rather than the bottom line in the short term.
So what happens if, things change very quickly for the worse in the days to come? How quickly can council and the city react, and how will that be communicated, and what's the next potential stages here?
Well, I was supposed to go camping this weekend, but I'm not going camping, and I don't know what Adam had planned for the weekend, but I think like all of us, everything is on hold for the foreseeable future. And so I was very impressed with the city's ability to respond rapidly to the restrictions that the Chief Medical Officer of Health brought forward yesterday afternoon. We had our response within minutes, and you can expect that level of responsiveness to advice from the public health officials in the hours and days and weeks to come. But if Adam wants to add to that. Sure, yeah.
So another way to respond to that is through the emergency management protocol. So we have an emergency management agency, which is a composition of the executive leadership team at the City of Edmonton, Edmonton Police Service, and Fire Rescue Services. If we reach a point where we need to engage in a conversation with council in that capacity, they become the Emergency Advisory Committee, and that can be called with different protocols than regular council. And if we need to, that would be the forum to be able to receive direction from council as the Emergency Advisory Committee.
On the shelters and the 250 limit, is there a problem there, or are they all?
It's been flagged by the Alberta Health as one of the higher risk areas in terms of needing to take some actions or some plans to address that. We have been reaching out to those agencies, we had a meeting yesterday. I believe folks are having meetings with staff today, and then we have a broader meeting next week. But it is identified already as one of the high-risk potentials, and the province and the city is ready to respond.
Do you have facilities like a rec center, but not necessarily that, like when we had the cold snap, you can move some people around?
So I mentioned this at council today. Through good work by council and administration in having the appropriate systems in place from an emergency perspective, and the fact that we've had to utilize those over the past number of years recently, we've been able to refine and come up with a way to respond in quick fashion. For instance, like what we did in the winter when the weather dropped below a certain temperature, that we could repurpose facilities to respond. Again, our approach would be response, but in a proactive way.
And to pick up on what Vinny was asking earlier with Jasper Avenue engagement, since the city seems to have to engage people in 183 different rounds of it, does that push projects back, and is that taken off this year's budget?
So early to say the impact on schedule, but we may need to make some decisions administratively that advances certain projects. If they're ones that do require considerable public engagement, we'll evaluate the need for that against the priority for getting the project completed. But we may take some steps on certain projects where we carry on based on the potential low risk of needing additional public engagement.
What's the status of City Hall going forward? Is it open, is it closed?
City Hall is open, certainly by canceling council meetings. The activation within City Hall is limited. We've also, through the school boards, the City Hall schools have been canceled. Other programs have been canceled in City Hall, but it remains open. And so similar to rec centers and other city attractions, we continue to monitor.
We just have a final comment from the mayor. Your initial comments, I sense some anxiety in your voice. I mean, this is obviously unprecedented territory. Oil's down, the economy is now suffering, and, you know, for lack of a better term, the city and the province is in a bad spot. Like, you know, a lot of people have anxiety out there. What's your message to those people?
Well, it's a very tense time, no doubt, and tense time for decision makers. So council rallied well this morning. It's a tense time for business. We're hearing that loud and clear into our office and through the media that there's a lot of uncertainty around there. And so as a leader of the community, I feel that too, but I also feel really, really well supported by a council that was very thoughtful this morning, and very well supported by a city administration that really gets it and has been really, really on top of this and very open and communicative both to decision makers and to the public. And I'm buoyed by my sense of how Edmontonians respond in a crisis. We will be tested by this, but we'll get through it together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, you can, sir.